Face-to-face communication is important for many reasons, yet is decreasing with the innovation of technology. What would you do to bring it back?
To bring communication back to our society, I would create spaces like waiting rooms and stuff like that are like no technology allowed. That way people have a more interpersonal connection when they're waiting, so that people talk more instead of just listening or just hearing.
Okay, I agree with you that it would be easier for people to go out of their comfort zone and actually be able to talk to others without being behind a screen. According to an article I had read online, that half of our teen population would rather be talking digitally rather than in person. We don't talk, but we are talking more than ever. People believe that communicating through text is okay. What do you think causes people to think that this is acceptable?
I think people probably think communicating through text is acceptable because in our society there's a lot of anxieties and a lot of stress to be like correct when talking. So when people talk to each other, it creates a sense of anxiety, and talking through technology is kind of a barrier that allows a comfort zone for them so that they don't have to rely on like their own feelings during the conversation. Talking behind a screen can be easier for them to like explain what they want to say without feelings being hurt or their own feelings being hurt, or just a sense of anxiety that they can receive from it.
Okay, I believe that is one reason for the increase of talking through technology along with innovation of technology, but I also believe that it has something to do with the way we are raised. Due to observational learning, we are raised around the technology, causing us to learn that this is how we communicate and talk to each other, because this is how our parents always did it. But on a further note, you mentioned how it could be hard for people who have anxiety to be able to be put in social positions. Since these people with anxiety struggle in social situations, how could that affect the way you communicate with others?
Okay, so the question was social.
People with anxiety struggle in social situations. How could that affect the way you communicate with others?
Okay, struggling in social situations is actually really difficult. I struggle with that myself. And so talking between other people is a difficult task sometimes, that even just a simple conversation having with your parents or somebody close to you, that can just be stressful itself. So talking through technology creates that barrier where people feel more comfortable to say what they want to say. And like, I know that there's a lot of like online, you can do stuff anonymously or stuff behind a screen so that you don't have that feeling of anxiety when talking to somebody. So when you talk behind a screen, it's like you can say what you want without the feeling of maybe the rejection coming back at you, or the fear, or the sense of being wrong about whatever you're saying. It's just easier to talk behind the screen.
So you're saying when people have anxiety, they're faced with struggles that other people may not understand, so it makes the person trying to communicate struggle, but also the people trying to understand them. What you're describing is something called panic disorder, which is where someone suddenly starts freaking out about stuff that shouldn't be a big deal in situations to somebody who doesn't have the disorder, and it can happen rapidly and unexpectedly. As explained in an article, that this could even affect someone interviewing for a job or just in their daily life, because it would require good communication skills, which someone with anxiety may not be able to develop due to their condition. So sometimes people express their thoughts in different ways. How do you feel when you can't assess discrete emotions when not in person?
Okay, so when not in person, I can't really understand what somebody's feeling when they're talking to me through a screen, through technology. So it can create a sense of like fear from your end and anxiety from your end of how they're feeling towards the conversation that you're having, or how they're going to respond. So they may respond and say something that has contradictory terms. So like they could be saying something, but it means something completely different from what you're getting from the conversation. So they could be expressing themselves in a negative way, like they're not actually liking the conversation that you're having, or they're upset about something, but you might not be able to pick up on that and might continue a conversation, and it's just completely wrong on your end, and then you don't feel great about it because you didn't know that they didn't feel good about it. And so it's difficult to sense the expression that's behind people when they're talking through technology.
So body language and gestures can help us a lot sometimes when we are talking to a person. So when we aren't in person, we can't tell how they may actually be feeling. Their responses can be said in a way that is very confusing without their expressions of emotion. There's something called nonverbal leakage, which shows us emotions but in a nonverbal behavior. So when speaking over text, it could be hard to tell if there are different emotions going on rather than what the texts are saying, just as you said. Because we can't always know what other people are thinking to understand their point of view and all that. So not having good communication can be stressful. What can you do to make it less stressful?
To make it less stressful, a person could maybe take a communications class, either through their primary school, online. They could go to a professional for help for it. And taking that class would improve their communication skills, which would make it easier to talk to people. Relationships are also beneficial to communication because when you build a strong relationship, it's easier to talk to somebody. So building a relationship and providing that connection with someone can increase their ability to be able to talk to you. And so communication skills are easier formed that way when you actually have a connection with the person you're talking to. And that can also make it easier for somebody to be able to talk to people that they don't have relationships to, because that bond and that relationship that they do have might force them to go out of their comfort zone to adapt to the communication and the types of conversations that they might have to have in the real world. And so, yeah, just taking classes, seeing somebody for your anxiety about your communicating, having a relationship with somebody who can help you improve that and who can help you work on it, that might be beneficial to solving this communication issue.
So when people are faced with stress during certain situations, they tend to try to avoid them because it makes them uncomfortable. But if people get out of their comfort zone, they may learn that it's easier for them to communicate in person and that it may be more understanding rather than over text, because as we talked about, when you talk over text, it's hard to tell emotions, and that's not a good way to learn how to communicate because you don't always get the both sides understanding, I guess.
Yeah.
Stress is a response that happens when you're put in difficult or uncomfortable situations. Hormones are released during that time in the body to help us deal with it, and it usually occurs when we're in situations we may not want to be in. There are many different factors that can cause stress. Different events in life or even work from your day-to-day basis, like in school, we're always put in situations where study for more than one test during a week or have multiple assignments that are due on the same day that could cause us to not be able to use our time wisely and have conflicts in the end. We may never be able to understand our responses because it's difficult to understand why it happens, but it happens to everybody in different ways. And this makes it hard for everybody, basically, because, yeah, that's about it. Well, thank you.